I believe that you belong wherever you want to be. There's no room where you can't walk into, like that famous quote, right? By Barack Obama that said, don't ever believe that there's a table or a room you don't belong in. We were considered less different class from the Cubans who had already been here. It's just terrible to say, but I feel more American than Cuban. I don't know if that's a bad thing. But then again, I don't feel, sometimes I'm like, well, wait, I'm not American either. To the Americans, I'm not American. To the Cubans, I'm not Cuban. What am I, And they started yelling, we love America. We love America. Trump 2028. We love America. And I'm like, what did I do to not make you think that I don't love America?
Welcome to The Narrative, a podcast of untold stories, a place where silence is broken, secrets are unearthed, and stories find their voice. I'm Dr. Crystal Ann England, therapist, storyteller, and your guide for healing through truth. From intergenerational wisdom to identity, race, purpose, and power, this is a sacred space for the stories we were never taught to tell, but always needed to hear. Because healing begins when our stories are spoken. So welcome. This is The Narrative of Untold Stories. And today I have the pleasure of being with my dear, longtime friend, Anabel Amador. Anabel, introduce yourself. Who are you?
So I'm Anabel Fajardo. Don't forget the Fajardo. My maiden name, Amador. I am married. I'll be married for 29 years and
29
Sunday.
as in 2 now.
29. That's a 2 and a
as
9.
in almost 13.
Mm-hmm. Almost 30. Lord. And I have 2 boys in their 20s. One is 21 and the other one is 25. So, yep, we've known each other for like 15 or 16 years already. We were babies.
It's so
we were
crazy to
babies
think
when we
about it.
met.
So let's go back to that time, right? When we first met and we were working at a wonderful school, right? In what was then the academic intervention program. And what was that time of your life like for you? Because I know you had just walked away from also another long-term job. You were in that job for a really long time. You arrived at new school. Tell me about the culture shock.
I don't know. It was definitely different. So I grew up in Hialeah, Miami. I was living in Miami Lakes, then decided we always wanted the kids to go to a good school, obviously, like every parent does. So we said, we're either going to go all the way down south or we're going to go north. So my sister-in-law and one of my husband's cousins had their kids there at that school. So I went and I checked it out. And actually the first time I went, I was like, wow. It was all like an open space, kids all over the place. I was like, what craziness is this? So I left, and then I don't know what made me decide to go back. They had just finished this beautiful building that they had just started. And I said, you know what? I'm going to give this place a try because my sister-in-law loves it. So there must be a reason why it's so good. So I went back and then I applied to work there as a teacher, but I started as a teacher aide. And I think you were a teacher aide there too at the time, as you studied and studied and studied and studied after being a teacher aide for someone who I actually was one of the biggest influences in my life. She was the best teacher I've ever met, which is a good friend of ours, Sunny. She taught me how to teach, basically, because my degree originally was not in education. It was in social work. So I switched and I got certified to teach. I don't know if you knew me. Yes,
Oh, wait
I
a
was
minute.
going to be a family
so all of these
therapist.
Years, I never knew that.
Yes.
So you had your degree in social work.
Yep. Mm-hmm. I wanted to make the world a better place. That I had this idea of just I was going to go out there and just save people. And then I started my master's, and I don't know what made me decide to switch. And then I got certified to teach. And I don't regret it because I got to spend all those years so close to my kids, so close. And I met some wonderful people along the way. But yeah, it was a decision for us to go north, away from, to live in Davie, which is an area where there were not a lot of Cubans, to be honest with you. But I never let that hold us back. In general, I don't believe in that. I believe that you belong wherever you want to be. There's no room where you can't walk into, like that famous quote, right? That famous quote by Barack Obama that said, "Don't ever believe that there's a table or a room you don't belong in," something like that. You sit around all these people, right, who've made it, and you realize that they're no more smarter than you are or better than you are.
Yeah.
So
speaking of, being a Cuban, and when did your family migrate here?
I came in 1980 through the Mariel boat lift. I don't know if you've heard of that. Jimmy Carter decided, I don't know the background too much, I should, that he would allow, Cubans to leave the island. And Castro agreed to that. He also said, we are going to line up. We're going to give you also political prisoners. And he also sent, along with the families, all types of prisoners from jails in Cuba. And I remember that distinctively because I remember being in a line about to get on the boat, which was a big shrimp boat. And there was a line of us, family, and on my left was a line. And I remember my mom saying, "Don't look over there. Don't look over there. They're bad people." And, once we were on the boat, my mom said, "Look at that. They were so helpful once we were, actually on the boat." But it's a long story. The whole trip is a long story. We had my aunt here who had left Cuba through Spain, and she decided that she was going to send her husband to go get the family, to go pick up the family that was left behind. I was 9 years old. I knew that there was something going on. There was a lot of, unrest in the country. I remember being in school and they would take us out to demonstrate in the streets. They would take you around this little town. Okay, so I was in 4th grade. They would take you out of class and they would say, "So-and-so, some family is leaving. We're going to go walk around their block and cheer on that, go away. We don't want you." I had no idea what was going on. I was just, I'm sure I was just with my friends going, "Yay, this is fun. We got to get out of class," So and then I remember that the night they came to pick us up in the middle of the night. I remember seeing my neighbors crying. We had a big window open, and I remember our neighbors just crying because we were leaving. I remember seeing my grandfather who was staying, just so sad. They knock on your door and they ask you, the whole town is there because they decided that they were going to come scream at you from whatever the communist, I don't know, party gets everyone and says, "We're going to go to this family. They are leaving." So they would come and they would stand outside your house and ask, "Are you going to leave or are you staying?" And then when my parents would say, "No, we're leaving," they would start chanting, terrible things. I remember my dad, the whole plan was, I think my mom would hold on to me and my dad would hold on to my little sister because my brother wasn't born yet. And we get in the car together because they said they're not going to hit the kids.
Yeah.
That was, so we were picked up by a car, I guess, I don't know, put there by the government or something that would pick us up in our house and take us to wherever the next destination was. Because we were in 2 places before we actually left. They would force you to go around the town. Like the men would have to register and ride around in a Jeep once a month, making sure the town was safe. It was part of the whole communist party. So I remember my dad said that he had a feeling he was going to go be picked up that night. So he kept telling everyone in town, go to sleep. There's nothing going on tonight. And he knew that it was actually him who was leaving. So then they drove us to this beach with makeshift tents under trees that people build from, I don't know, sheets and things that they were able to bring into that beach where they kept us. I think they call it a mosquito, which means the mosquito. I guess there were a lot of mosquitoes there. I don't know. And we lived under a tree for like 2 weeks.
Wow.
2 weeks.
So, Annabelle, from the time they pick you guys up from your house to the time you actually get on the boat, there's 2 weeks in between where you're living on the beach in a sheet, like in a little
Just
tent.
picture it. Yeah, it was like a concentration camp, for lack of a better word or explanation. They would treat us as second or third class citizens. I remember they would have kids walking around with signs with the name of the boat, so they can get all the people that were living in that one boat in one area. Like the families were trying to organize each other, because constantly throughout the day, they have someone on the speakers going, okay, we need everyone for this boat. If you don't make it on time, we're going to leave you. We're going to leave you. And like that, they would count down. And so people would start running with whatever they can find, families grabbing their children. And then they would take us to another. So we were there for 2 weeks. And then they took us to another place. I don't remember the name of this place. I think we spent one night there. This one was even scarier. It was tents. It was like, I do remember seeing like olive green tents with, little cots, one on top of the other. I think we spent one night there. And then they took us to the port. And I remember making that line I told you about, getting on the boat and just sitting there. I remember like my mom saying, because as a kid, you don't even know what's going on. So she was like, they picked up like 2 boats that were about to capsize along the way. So many people drowned, on that, during that time. So people would have big boats and go on their big boats, but people who had tiny little boats would also go on the tiny little boats and pick up their families. So, and then we got here and we drove through Key West. I remember that. And then my aunt, who lived here already for a while, had, listened to this part. She had rented an apartment for us to live in. She lived in an apartment. She rented another apartment close by for us to live in. And the owner, who was Cuban, did not want us to live there because we were Marielitos, right? So Cuban discriminating against another Cuban, which you see that. I'm sorry, but you see that a lot.
Yeah. Wait, so what does that mean, Annabelle? What does it mean to be a Marielito? What does that mean? What is
Marielito was, okay, so the port of Mariel, right? The port of Mariel. And then they just put Ito next to it. I don't know, as a little term of endearment, but it really wasn't a term of endearment. It was more like a derogatory term. So they did not want us, we were considered like less, I don't know, refined, I don't know, different class from the Cubans who had already been here. And then I remember my aunt had to give up her apartment for us to move into her apartment so she could take the one that the guy refused to give us. He had never met us before. And then as the years went by, he actually apologized to my dad for doing that. So, yep, struggle, right? The struggle of not belonging. Because like I told you, I don't know where I belong.
But say more on that. So now when you think about your identity, do you feel like an American? Do you feel like a Cuban woman? Do you feel like, are you somewhere in between? Like,
so weird.
What is it? What do you feel like it's like?
Yeah, so I've told you before, it changes, There are times when I feel, I've been here 45 years. I'm 54. I'm about to turn 55.
Wait a minute. I would never know, girl. You look so good.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Sometimes this is terrible to say, but I feel more American than Cuban. I don't know if that's a bad thing. But then again, I don't feel them. Sometimes I'm like, well, wait, I'm not American either. To the Americans, I'm not American. To the Cubans, I'm not Cuban. What am I, I really don't know what I am. And I've talked to my sister mostly since my brother was born here. He has a different perspective. But I don't know what I am. And then on my mother's side, there were Spaniards. Both of my grandparents on my mom's side, they were from Spain. They met in Cuba. That was one of the reasons they didn't leave earlier, because my grandfather didn't want to immigrate again. I remember my mom saying that he didn't want to go through that again. My grandmother eventually did leave, and my grandfather died in Cuba before she left. And then on the other side, I guess they just didn't have the opportunity to leave earlier. Everybody has their own reasons. I don't know. But especially the climate that we are in today makes me feel like I'm not wanted, to be honest with you, after so many years here and having my kids born here. My brother, is a veteran. I remember I mentioned to you, I felt like for the first time in my life, and I know that that's a privilege to say, right? The first time in my life, I felt like discriminated. I felt like these people don't like me and they don't even know me.
Tell that story,
and
Anabel.
I know that that's a privilege for me to say that, right? Because it's out there, but
well, yes,
you don't see it. I don't.
I think it is a privilege that you've lived almost 55 years, and it's the first time as you're 54 to experience racism in the way, and I want you to tell that story, by the way, too, in the way that you experienced it recently. But I think whether it's a privilege to have only experienced it now or not, racism is racism is racism. Share a little bit about that story.
So my youngest is at the University of Florida, and we were just moving him out of an apartment building. We had just spent the whole day working, moving him out. We got back to our hotel, and, we're like, let's go have a drink at the bar. Let's celebrate the fact that we just did another major thing. As parents, you're always doing things. And it's like, we moved him out. Hopefully this is the last time. So we sit there. As I walk up to the bar, I see to my right, I see a couple. They look American, right? Because I call them American, because even though I'm American, I don't feel it's, but you know what I mean? They seem like they were born here, generations, I see some African Americans. And I remember I asked you, is that the correct term that I should use to describe these young people? About 5 of them sitting at the other end of the bar, was doing their own thing. We sat down, and then I noticed one of them was wearing a red hat, a very special red hat, right?
We all know that about. Infamous red hat.
We all know what hat that is. Yeah. We all know what hat that is. So I made my assumptions too, Let's be honest. I made some assumptions.
Yeah.
But I didn't pay much attention to it because I really didn't care. I was there just to sit down and relax. So it was a man and a woman. The man turns to me and goes, so where are you from? And I'm like, Davie, Florida? He goes, no, but where are you from? I'm like, oh, okay. It's that kind of like, where are you from? And I was like, yeah. So I was like, oh, I'm Cuban. I was born in Cuba. I came when I'm telling him more information than I need to. My husband's looking at me like, why? Because he's a very quiet man, as you know. And I'm like, no, if he's going to ask me, I'm going to tell him. So I said, I'm from Cuba. I came when I was whatever. The wife is going like this. She goes, I'm just going to keep my mouth shut. And I'm like, what is she talking about? Whatever I'm saying is bothering her, right? So he proceeds to start making fun, basically, of us. He starts, I'm going to say what he said because I thought it was, looking back, it's funny. He starts going, chicharrones, I want to eat some chicharrones. And I look at my husband, I'm like, are you listening to this? He's like, just like, ignore him. I'm like, okay, I'm going to ignore him. But if he asks what I do for a living, I'm going to say, I am an immigration attorney and I'm here to set people. It was like, I'm going to go along and make him feel, well, anyway. So I ignored him most of the time. We didn't engage much. I did feel like unwanted because then he got up and his wife got up and they started yelling, we love America. We love America. Trump 2028. We love America. And I'm like, what did I do to like not make you think that I don't love America? Right? So it made me so sad. And then I look down and I see these young kids. And like I told you, this is the first time I felt that. Maybe I'm just naive. I had never really felt like discriminated because of who I was. And then I think, wow, I can just imagine what they must have gone through in their short lives, right? Who am I to complain? Who am I to complain when this is the first time I feel like that has happened to me? So I went back to the room and I was really sad. I was really sad, because I was like, I told my husband, like, where do I belong? And I took it all, of course, me, like, nothing's happening to him. He's sitting next to me. But he was born here. So I'm like, you're different. You were born here. Where do I belong? He's like, you belong here. Don't be silly. I'm like, no, it just doesn't feel it. And no one could take that away from you. No one could take that feeling away from me that I don't know where I belong.
But Anabel, I'm so glad you're sharing this, because this is a feeling that so many immigrant children feel, right? Even for me, I was born here in America, but growing up, people didn't see me as American. But I'm not Jamaican or Guyanese enough, but I was never American enough because of the way I spoke or because the way I dressed, like being surrounded mostly by, in certain places where there were African Americans, I didn't fit in there because I'm not African American, right? And so I didn't understand the things that African Americans went through because my family had just gotten here. And our experience in, Jamaica was very different, or in Guyana is very different than the experience that's here. So this feeling of where do I belong is unfortunately, it's a very common feeling. I've even had clients who tell me, I don't fit in here. I don't know where home is for me. I've always been like straddling the line between a homeless child who just kind of, sometimes I feel good and sometimes I feel lost.
Like country, what is your country? I mean, and not to say that I'd appreciate everything I have and everything that I have, been able to do here. That's not the point. The point is, am I American to all Americans? Am I? I bet I'm not. I bet to a lot of them I'm not. So there's people who that cannot be taken away from, right? They have a country, they know where they were born, and that's it. I don't have that. I don't know if I'll ever feel any different. At the same time, it's honestly not that important to me because I feel like we belong to the whole world, Who's to say these are all lines we drew up at some point?
They are. They are lines that we all drew up.
Religion. You know how I feel about all of that? All those things that were created to separate us.
But that is why we're created, right?
They were created to separate us. They were created to put us in little boxes. You belong here. This is your box, and this is your box, and this is your box. So who cares?
So when you think now then, Anabel, right, of your purpose in this life, you and I have talked about this a little bit. What do you think is your purpose? What did you come to understand your purpose in this life is?
Wow, that's a tough one, obviously, right? Who really knows 100%? I don't know. I do think we are spiritual beings, and we're here to have interactions with other spiritual beings and grow together in whatever way that might be. As my job, as you know, I work with children. A lot of them have learning disabilities. I was thinking about that the other day. I was like, is this what the creator wants me to do? Is this the gift that he gave me? Not that I'm patting myself on the back or anything, but when I sit with the kids I work with, I sometimes just have a moment. I say, please, give me the ability, whatever that is, to be able to help them, because I really do want to help them. And the same thing with my friends, with you, like I feel like the most important thing is to connect with other people, to grow and connect with other people.
Absolutely.
No matter your religion and your race and all those other things, created by, people.
Again, like ways of dividing us, right?
Mm-hmm.
Another box
that they put us in.
Yeah. As you move through from being a social worker, right, and getting that degree, and then becoming a teacher's assistant, and then actualizing into a teacher for all of those years, Where are you now and what are you doing?
So right now I'm doing what I only dreamed of. And I have a friend to thank for pushing me to do that. So I'm working for myself, I guess you could say. So I opened up a center called the Learning Connection in Davie. Little, advertisement here. So I wanted a place where I could offer kids from all types of learning backgrounds the ability to work with someone who uses research-based interventions to address whatever learning disability they may have. I feel like, sometimes you don't realize what you have. I'm like, I do have this experience. I have been doing this for 25 years. I can approach it from this side, from that angle, from this angle. So I think I do understand what I'm doing. And that's what I do nowadays. I have this place and it's been going really well, knock on wood, thanks to my friend who pushed me to do it. So I'm really happy to be able to, like the other day I was thinking, wow, these parents trust me with their biggest, most precious gift. They put them in my hands and they walk away, And besides teaching them and giving them the abilities that I think I can help them give, I build them up. I recently had a mom bring me her daughter who had very low self-esteem. And it had to do with another teacher who had just broken her in a way, And I said, don't worry, because I know I could do, if there's one thing I could do, is I can tell this little girl how precious she is and how she'll be okay and how we all make mistakes, So that's another part of what I do.
I'm so glad you said, going back to purpose, right? Of you pray and you ask God to give you what you need to be able to help these kids in whatever area they are struggling in. And, not just because you're my friend, but also as my daughter's former tutor, when I came to you, Luna wasn't reading. And I remember being like, oh my gosh, the school says if she can't read by, I forget when it was, like the end of the school year, then she can't move on or something crazy that they had required of her. And my child is now in advanced reading classes. She's reading in a third grade level, probably even higher. And she's only in second grade. That speaks to the work that you do and to the kind of educator that you are. And again, I'm not just saying this because I'm a mama and I'm your friend, but like as someone who sees it, and I think, this even goes back to Sunny, when you have amazing mentors, educators who love what they do, and this is their purpose and their passion is to help kids, it shows, right? And so you got this amazing, incredible training at the very beginning of your career with Sunny, and now you, I'm sure, have influenced probably so many other educators that you probably don't even realize. And what do you see for yourself in the long term, the vision of utilizing this purpose and your passion?
I just want to continue, to help kids and to grow. I'd like to bring some occupational therapy, some speech therapy, like a place where parents can go and just find all those resources, in one place, and just continue to do more of the good work,
So, okay, now let's shift a little bit. So you said at the beginning that it's going to be 29 years that you've been with the man.
All time of that man that you say can do no wrong.
So Anabel and I have this running joke where I always say that her husband can do no wrong, that man can do no wrong.
I don't know where you got that, but okay. I believe you when you say it.
Because he's just...
I'll call you and say, I'm really upset at him right now. He can do no wrong. Okay, thanks.
Because he's just the sweetest, kindest, most even-tempered man.
Yeah. He really is even-tempered. But I know how to poke him. It's fun. It's fun to poke him. I was telling him today, I'm like, what do I tell Crystal Ann if she asks me like what the secret is? I actually did ask him. He goes, love. I'm like, yeah, I know it's love, but it's more than that. It's,
So
it's
what
not
is
just
it?
love.
Share with the people.
First of all, it's luck, because I'm not going to sit here and say everyone should stick by their guy, no matter who he is, and just make it happen. Because sometimes the person's not right for you, and you have to move on. So first of all, I got lucky. I don't know, I guess. The second thing would be, that's my person. He's my person. I can't imagine doing things without him, envision going places or doing things. He's always there. Um, it's not perfect. No relationship is perfect. It's just knowing that that you have someone good and you're not going to give up on that person. You're not giving up because you know who they really are. And, just not giving up and never, another thing he mentioned, which is true, never disrespect each other. I've never said, the F word to him, and he's never said it to me. Sure, he's thought about it. You can think about it, by the way. You can think about it. You just can't say it. So I give you permission. No. So you really shouldn't, don't disrespect each other. Don't use the D word. I'm going to divorce if you, don't play around with, don't play around with that stuff unless you really mean it. Unless you really mean it, and just always try to, I don't know, just wake up the next day and forget about all the silliness you argued about the day before, because most of the time it's just silliness. We were upset at each other a couple of days ago, and I'm like, oh my gosh, we're arguing about the silliest thing, this is so silly, let's move on,
And what about the kiddos? So you have
Oh my
two boys,
gosh.
or should I say two men?
Mhm.
What has that
Two
been
young
like
men.
for you as
It's been terrifying at times. You're always holding your breath. You're always holding your breath. And you're always like, Lord, please, keep guiding them. Always let your kids know that you're there for them unconditionally. They need to know that. They need to hear it over and over again. Always empower them. Tell them the truth at whatever level they are of understanding. I feel like I've always tried to do that with my kids. Remind them, family, how important family is, making good decisions. Tell them about the mistakes you've made. Tell them. Because if you made mistakes in your life and you took the wrong turn, there comes a time when you're like, don't do that, because guess what? I did, and this is what's going to happen, And then there are times when they have to learn on their own because they don't listen. So that's another thing. I've had to learn, and I'm a helicopter, a scuba diving, a submarine mom, whatever you want to call it. Yes, I am. Yes, I am. But it's what works for me, being on top of them.
But what is it that allows you to take a step back, to allow them to make some of those mistakes?
So hard to do that. I'm still not really good at that. I got to be honest with you. I'm still not really good at that, but I'm getting better. I've gotten better at saying, this is what you want. Okay. This is my opinion. Now go ahead and do it. I'll just sit back and wait. You come back and you tell me I was right. So, yeah. Because sometimes they do have to learn it on their own,
Now I'm going to drop a very heavy, well, not heavy, but a very big question. And the question is, what do you think is the secret to life? If you were to be being asked to crack the code of what's the purpose of this entire life, what is this the secret of living a purposeful, loving, gentle life with purpose and passion, what would that be? What is the secret to do? Let's do that from your perspective.
I would say learning about yourself, learning about others, learning about consequences, learning about sacrifice, learning about good things. I always tell my kids, never put limits on yourself. And I think this is also what I mentioned at the beginning. You belong wherever you want to be. Don't let anyone ever tell you that you don't belong somewhere, because you're here. This is your earth. This is your planet. This is your time. And it's your time to do whatever you want to grow and learn as a person. So I would say that.
But Anabel, where did you learn to have that audacity to say, yes, this is your planet, this is your time. Don't allow anyone to make you feel that you don't belong. Where did you learn that? I know Obama, right, with the table, but where?
No, but I learned through living, I went through a time in my life when I suffered from anxiety and panic attacks. And it was a very scary time. And I used to think I'm going to be so ashamed to talk about this my whole life. And I'm not at all. I was always a very shy kid, especially high
I
school.
can even imagine.
I had very negative self-talk. I'm not good enough. I'm not pretty enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not this. I'm not that. Like constant negative self-talk. And then I was like, one day when I was feeling bad, and by the way, what worked was therapy and medication. Okay.
See?
So just
Yeah.
to clear that out,
Yeah.
a combination of both. I just told myself, this is not the real Anabel. I had to look inside. The real Anabel is not scared of life. Bring her back, bring her back. I had to kind of tell myself that to get out of that ugly moment or time in my life where, I was afraid to just be surrounded by people. I felt like, in a way, social anxiety disorder is like you think everybody's judging you all the time. And that's exactly what it was. And it was so weird, We all have to go through things. I had to go through that to grow. And that's fine. I accept it. And I feel like if I could get over that and move on, then I'm not going to let anybody tell me where I can and cannot go,
Anabel, I love that because I think the person that we are meant to conquer is ourselves, right? The limitations that we put on ourselves, because oftentimes, there might be jackasses like from the bar who want to put limitations on us. But the truth is, majority of the limitations come from our mind, our own brain telling us that these things are true, that people are looking at us, people are judging us, when the truth is that majority of the time, it's not happening. Like everyone is focused on their own shit.
Exactly. I heard something exactly like that yesterday. I forgot what the line was. It was like, growth happens when you realize no one was paying attention to you in the first place. I'm like, I was in the center of the universe? What? Are you kidding me? Everybody wasn't judging me because of the way I look, because of the way I did. Yeah. So I also think it's not only, obviously, there's like a biological component,
Of course.
A predisposition to that type of feeling, right? To anxiety and depression, things like that. But it's also, what you have to tell yourself. I remember my dad, old school, was like, just talk yourself out of it. What do you talk when you feel that way? Just talk it out. Talk it out. Because he didn't believe in medication. He didn't believe in any of that. So I had to also, wrestle with that, like, no, Dad, I literally feel physical symptoms. I'm shaking. My hands are sweating. I feel like I'm going to faint. It's all in your head. Yeah, it's all in my head, but not in the way you think it is,
Oh my goodness. But I'm so glad, going back to you having your own understanding and courage, that you could listen to what he said, but still trust yourself enough to know what you needed and then give yourself that permission to do that, right? To take the medication, to have talk therapy, and then for that to be able to work for you. So Anabel, as we wrap up here, what do you want to tell the people? What do you want to leave the people with?
Believe in yourself. Don't give up. I know that sounds like it's what everybody says, but it really is what you need to do. Just get out there and make your dreams come true. Visualize. I believe a lot in visualizing and, positivity and all of that. Whenever you feel down, as we all do, get your head out of, and you can always start again. No matter where you are right now, people out there, you can start again. There's always tomorrow, right? There's always tomorrow. Don't give up. Don't give up on yourself because life can get better. no matter where you are. And that's the truth.
I love that, Anabel. I love that. You can always start again. Well, I appreciate you so much, my friend. And I know that the people are going to find so many incredible little gems from our conversation today. And to all the people out there, if you like what you heard, go ahead and like, subscribe, share, download it, send it to a friend. And we thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Anabel, my dear friend. I
Love
appreciate
you. We need to do it again.
Yes.